for joining Sparks of Love podcast. My name is Jerry Lynn Sparks, and today in studio we are blessed to have Verna Linney. Welcome, Verna.
Thank you so much.
So Verna is my neighbor, and I've known her for close to 15, 16 years now. And she is a former science teacher and nurse. So she's very educated in, the sciences and the human physiology. I can go to her for anything about medicine. Like, she knows everything. She's a very great researcher and knows a little bit about everything. And I find her just fascinating. So I thought she'd be a great person for Evan King here. He's my producer, and I to interview. And also we have Scott Fitzgerald, who is the owner of Rock Vox Studios here in Bushnell's Basin, outside Pittsford, New York, where we're recording from. So thank you for joining us, Verna.
You're very welcome.
And so Verna's husband, Jack Linney, was a very good friend of mine, and Verna is recently widowed. Jack passed away, it was a year ago this week?
The 29th.
The 29th.
29th of December.
So a recent widow, and his passing just absolutely devastated us all. He was a very beloved man. I thought of Jack as a surrogate father. He's how I met Verna. I was in physical therapy, and he was one of the patients, and he would come in every day with jokes printed out, and he would go around the whole clinic telling jokes to everybody. And every time I would go in there, he'd hand me a piece of paper at the end of the visit, and he would have the jokes of the day printed out. So that was Jack's little gift to the world there, was, printing out jokes. And then I met Verna, and Verna remembers the story better than I do, because it was when my children were young, and my memory is shot from those from those years. But I had a cat die. My beloved cat, Sunday, my college cat. I brought her from UCLA here. She was 16 years old, this beautiful dilute calico, and she had died. And it was winter in Rochester, and the ground is like rock. And I couldn't bury the cat, and I was worried that I didn't get it deep enough. And so I needed something to either get the hole deeper or to put something on top of it. And Jack, as you'll learn, had every tool known to man. I'm really not exaggerating. Like, literally, if there was a tool, Jack was going to have it. Mm-hmm. And so I went out there just distraught that the wolves or whatever, was in Churchville. I don't know what they were.
We don't have wolves in Churchville. We have coyotes. Well, we don't have wolves.
The coyotes were going to dig up my beloved cat. And so I went out to Jack's, and that's when I met Verna. And I don't remember what your solution was, but the two of you came up with
Saccrete. It was a bag of Saccrete.
And I guess I must have mixed it up and poured it onto my beloved cat's grave. But I met Verna in death of my beloved cat. But that's how we got to know each other. Mm-hmm. And they had a big farm property out in Churchville. I have a little village plot, and they would allow me to go out and, ride their, I don't know what that vehicle is called.
It's a trail wagon.
They would let me ride the trail wagon, and sometimes the kids would join me. And after living in Los Angeles in an apartment, really no yard whatsoever, and then moving here and having a little village plot of 0.4 acre, if that, I think it's 0.25. Mm-hmm. Their place is like a metropolis, like there's woods, and there's forest, and there's streams, and there's deer and birds, and like it was just like a return to my childhood. So I used to love to go out there and visit with Jack every chance I got, and a reprieve from my job in Congress, which was really stressful. So they became like family to me. So I wanted to have Verna here today to talk about love in any way that you want to talk about it. But I would like to start off asking for you, what is your definition of love?
Oh, wow. I remember once reading that there were 7 kinds of love by the ancient philosophers, like between a human being and the earth, because we'll fall to the earth, and mother and child, and and then between a human being and God, and all sorts of graduations between. So,
but of those, do you have one that particularly resonates with you?
Well, Jack and I had a mature love. There was definitely sexual spark between us, and we had a mature love. And he was grieving, a terrible grief reaction to the death of his first wife. And a mutual friend said we ought to meet one another. And she came to me. I was working the graveyard shift at that time. And she said, Verna, write your name, your phone number on this paper. Would you like to meet a perfect gentleman? And I said, what?
That still exists?
Dinner? A movie? Oh, yeah. Okay. So I did. And I thought, well, I'd wait for 2 weeks to hear anything. But no, within about 3 days. He was in a Civil War reenactment group. Mm-hmm. And this fellow employee of mine, colleague, was also with the group. And she took it to the commander of the group, and the commander and his wife had him over for dinner. And the commander here's this woman's name and telephone number. Call her up. And we arranged to meet at a restaurant, Beef and Barrel, in Olean for coffee.
Beef and Barrel. That sounds like something you can't make up in life.
No, it's a very popular restaurant in Olean.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
very cool.
Specialize in roast beef sandwiches and things. But we met for coffee, and Jack talked about his life. And particularly about how he took care of his wife in her end disease. Mm-hmm. And I had a husband who kind of, when I got asthma and almost died, he held me in contempt because I wasn't able to earn money anymore.
Yeah. So you had a traumatic first marriage. Mm-hmm. And his wife was, the disease, she was dying of slow death of cancer, right?
Right. She did not go see medical people until till she had bone problems.
Oh, wow.
It had metastasized to her bones. And Jack was with her in some sort of treatment, and he picked up a pamphlet, and it said, if you have X number of treatments or less, it is only for palliative care. Mm. And he then knew what the outcome was going to be. Yeah. His wife told him nothing.
Yeah.
And, well, anyway, he took real good care of her.
Which is amazing for, a way of showing love in sickness and in health, right? That's the vows of marriage.
That's what it's supposed to be.
I know, but it isn't always the case, right, Verna? No, I mean, the way your ex-husband treated you when you were just sick with something that wasn't, deadly, to be resentful. So that you already knew that Jack was a keeper because of the way he treated his dying wife.
Absolutely.
And I never heard him in the years I knew Jack, for a long time. Never once did I ever hear him say anything negative about his first wife, ever. He just didn't. To me.
He did say a few things to me.
But okay, so you're in an intimate relationship with Jack, so that's where a different level of honesty comes. But to the public face, I never heard him. And to me, that is a form of love. Like he protected, that public thing. And I thought that was, like you said earlier, the perfect gentleman.
Yes, he was. He was a real sweetheart. He was easy to get along with. He was so easy to live with. And
he's big too. He's a big guy. Like you could. Was he 6'4", 6'6"?
Well, no.
He's big.
He was about 6'1" when he was a teenager.
He seemed bigger than that to me.
But he carried a lot of weight, so he was a big, brawny guy.
Yeah. He worked for the state.
He worked for the state on the highway. He had forearms like Popeye.
Yes.
I couldn't help myself.
Yeah. He was. He's very, very attractive man, and it had that personality, that was just a real winner. Like I said, he brought jokes and stuff. Always had a story. And one of the interesting things I found, so you've probably got this mental image, highway worker, big guy, arm, big forearms, had to have every tool known to man, had to have the tractor, loved hunting. Oh my God, he taught.
Is he a lumberjack?
Pretty much, he was a Jack the lumberjack.
That's what I'm picturing.
Get this. Yeah. So he was very into hunting and fishing and all that stuff. And I go into shopping with him one time. He wanted me to have some type of pocket knife for protection. And we go to he wanted to drive. and he had to have a special car because he was so tall. He had his car. Remember that car? Yeah. So anyway, we get into the car, and I'm expecting country music to be on the radio. You'll never guess what blared out of that radio that he loves to listen to.
What?
Classical.
Opera. He was listening to opera. I just couldn't believe it.
A man of taste.
This is
man
a
of taste.
flannel shirt, overall wearing, tractor driving, gun shooting, hunting guy listening to opera. And I was like, what is happening?
I don't understand why people like have that perception of people who like, because I like classical music too. I'm a fairly big guy, and they think like, oh, you're a frat dude. You like football. And
Yeah,
I like
that's
classical
what I
music.
thot of you. I thought frat dude football.
Well, I am a frat dude, but I also
there it is. There it is. I stand correct.
So you're,
I'm vindicated.
Your profiling me was correct.
I am.
But I do like classical music, but I get so much like.
I wouldn't give you grief. I love classical music, but I think people, if they're looking at me,
People make me turn it off when I like take them driving. Because I always like to blast, and I'll be like, because it's it's very therapeutic. I like to be within the.
Our cars are always tuned to WXXI.
Really?
Radio. As a matter of fact, on the way over here, I was listening to the Magic Flute.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
very
wonderful.
It was just starting.
Yeah. I just remember when that happened with Jack, I'm like, these two things do not compute. Like and he
Opposites attract.
not only listening to it, you could see him, and I would go over there and listen and visit with him sometimes. He could get tears in his eyes from listening to classical music or opera. It really moved him. And I remember just asking him what it was he loved about that. And he said something similar to what you said, Evan. It spoke to him in a deep way, and it just made him feel relaxed and just evoked emotions in him. It was a nonverbal way for him to feel things that maybe he wouldn't verbalize.
Sometimes you just got to let it out, because like more often than that with me, like I'll hold a lot of things in, and like when I'm listening to classical music, it'll touch me to a core, and I'm like, oh God, I think I'm gonna cry alone in this car right now as I'm driving down the I-90. And then like sometimes I'll have to pull over and I'll just like cry like a bitch. I'll just cry and cry. But you just let it all out, because like normally, guys wouldn't typically let that out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can relate to what
You would have loved Jack. You would have loved Jack. I know you would have, and I know Scott would have too. One of the things that was really funny about Jack, though, and I don't know if I should tell you this or not, Verna, but he had some health problems in the last several years of his life.
Yes.
And Verna being a nurse, it was kind of a perfect thing for him. I ran into him at the local town grocery store, and he was so upset. He's like, Verna has taken away all the sugar from my life. And he was really upset. Verna was the sugar robber, the sugar thief. And he was very upset about it. I mean, this man was really upset that he could not have his sugar. And I remember we were going out into the woods for a hike one day. And I don't know if I did the right thing or not, but I had one of those teensy tiny little, those little square bars that come in like the multi-packs, about the size of my thumb. And I just walked by him, and you were ahead of him, and I just kind of slide him a little tiny candy. I don't know if it was the right thing or not, but I gave Jack a tiny little candy bar one time. To me, that was me showing love. It wasn't going to kill him, one little piece. But he was very upset about, not having sugar in his life. But, for the most part, that's the only, I guess, negative thing that I heard Jack ever say about you is he was really upset that you took his sugar away.
While we go to the luncheons for the senior citizens of Riga, and there are desserts.
Yeah.
And, I just let him eat whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And so once a month, I figured that'd be fine.
Yeah.
That'd be fine. A party. Yeah. Who cares?
But one of the stories I can tell you that I knew Jack loved Verna was when she got involved in our local politics. And I won't say which party. We'll keep it non-political. But so she was very active in this particular political party. And she wanted him to go with her to it. And I was over there visiting, and you left the room. He's like, I cannot believe all my friends are going to find out that I went to this thing. And I'm like, well, you don't have to go. He's like, no, I got to go. I got to support her. And so he went, and he sat in the corner like looking around. He was very upset to be there, but he did it for her. And I thought that was love, because Jack is also incredibly political. Like, he had his beliefs and you knew it, but he didn't say it in a disrespectful way. But I always thought that was a form of love. Like, when you're willing, like the earlier, definition of love, you said there's 7 kinds of love. Well, my mom and dad, I asked them, their definition of love, and Dad said it was the unconditional love you give to people, a service kind of love where you want them to be happy. And that's what Jack was demonstrating to you. I mean, this was completely antithetical to everything in that man's core. His cellular being was like absolutely the opposite of you in that regard. And yet he went, and he was always there. He supported her every single time. And it had to have been hard for him. It had to have been hard. But to me, that is love. They just, to me, it was just a hard thing, and he did it because he wanted to support you. And I just thought that was really, really sweet. It depends on how passionately. I mean, Jack, I think, was very passionate about the things that he believed in. He was a man of conviction. I mean, he definitely was not milquetoast at all. This is a man who was like firm in his beliefs, and yet he made himself uncomfortable for her benefit. I think that is a form of love. Do you not agree with that?
Well, no, I think it is, but I don't think, like, I don't, maybe it's because it's whatever's going on today and whatever zeitgeist, but because a lot of people are like, if this person doesn't believe in this, I don't love them. And it's like, I think that's a great example of it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, there's been some evidence in research that shows.
By the way, what is milquetoast?
Milquetoast, just kind of bland.
Is that what that is? Because I've heard that expression so much. I'm like, what?
But it's not M-I-L-K. Everyone thinks it's M-I-L-K. So I think it's M-I-L-Q-U-E-T-O-A-S-T, milquetoast. I didn't know that was the origin of that.
So why do they spell it the milk way?
I don't know. Maybe a French origin.
I'll
the English
consult
language.
the joy of cooking and get back with you later.
That's right.
Anyway.
But the thing that I wanted to ask you is, now that it's been almost a year, how has love changed for you? Do you appreciate Jack any differently now that the story for his physical world has ended, but I mean, he still continues to impact people. I mean, I love him. I miss him. I wanted to call him the other day. And ask him something, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I can't call him anymore. Yeah. I mean, has the way your love for him is felt changed in the last year?
From the very first that I knew Jack, I knew he had serious health problems.
And how long were you married?
Oh, we married New Year's Eve 2000.
Oh, wow. So 22 years.
And, I knew he would not live as long as his mother or father.
Yeah.
And he had high blood pressure, so severe that no course of medications could bring it down to a healthy level. It was so concerning that when we were in Olean, the cardiologist there sent us for a cardiac cath. The cardiologist who did that said, your 60 years of clean living, non-drinking, non-smoking,
right,
has left you with the cardiac arteries of an 18-year-old.
Wow.
But he'd already had a small stroke.
Oh, I didn't know.
Before I met him. He'd had a small stroke from high blood pressure. He was dating an alcoholic woman, and he turned the kitchen chair into a pretzel, he told me. It was just so frustrating.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
And, with one of those bent chrome chairs. So anyway, it was years before one of the physicians said, there's nothing left to do but have you lose weight. And I'm saying, why didn't somebody tell us before?
Yeah.
And we were in Weight Watchers 2 days later.
They
And
did
he
it
dropped
together
the weight.
as a couple. They did it.
We dropped the weight.
Yeah, I remember.
And, they dropped like 5 of the medications, and he was only on 2.
Really?
And, and got his blood pressure in a reasonable range.
Yeah.
But
And that was your form of showing him love, going with him to that, trying to modify his diet, that sort of thing, right? That was you showing love to him.
And he said of me, he said, the standard American diet, the sad diet, leaves people with problems in the nether regions. And he said, I have never had such good until I ate your food.
He actually said that out loud.
Often. And I would serve something and he would just love it. And he said, the man who left you was a GD fool. Slurp, slurp.
Verna's a very good cook, and she's very creative with it too. And so is it true then, Evan, that a key to a man's heart is through his stomach?
I mean, I wish that was the case for me. I never had that. I never had I had like a couple exes who would cook, but
Yeah.
I like food. I don't know.
What about you, Scott? Is that how your wife snagged you?
No.
No.
God, no. I do all the cooking in my house. That's,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
I need to learn how to cook.
Yeah.
Because that's the new thing now. Is like the guy's got to cook. Guys got to cook in order to.
I will say, when I see a guy doing something domestic, it does resonate with me. Like if you see a man like washing the dishes, that's one of my favorites. Like seeing a man standing at the sink washing dishes, I'm like, yes. Because I didn't have a model of that, Verna. Growing up, I did not have a single male example ever. I've scoured my brain trying to memorize anything, trying to remember anything. Not a single instance can I see a man washing dishes in my past. I know with my ex-husband, that used to be a point of contention because he was raised by a stay-at-home mother. And so he had a model of mother that was home with the kids and didn't work. And it took a lot of working with him to make him understand that I'm going to work. I'm going to have a career. I stayed home with my kids until they were all in school full time. But literally the moment that my youngest was in kindergarten full time, I got a full-time job. And I wasn't going to come home then and have the whole house a wreck and I was the only one cleaning it. And so that was a lot of contention with us. And I told him one time, it's a form of love if you share the workload. You know, I really do believe that. And with Jack, like I felt like he definitely shared that workload. Like I felt like, you know, you did the cooking, sure. Maybe that's a more traditional thing, but he would, you know, hunt and do things like that. He would do all the yard work. Like he'd love to do there was a division of labor for sure. Nowadays there's more, you know, men will do stuff in the kitchen. Jack was, you know, 82 when he died.
83.
Was he 83?
Wow.
83. He lived a good life.
That's a long life.
Yeah, he did. And he also, I just think.
I'm hoping I make it to 25.
Oh, Lord. Do I want to know how old you are, Evan? Are you 22?
I'm 23.
Oh, 23. Oh, well.
Gotta be
huge difference.
24.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So I got 2 years left. No,
2 years. Yeah. But, you know, Verna, earlier, like if you had to describe the things about Jack that you loved, what would be? Give me 4 things you loved about Jack.
Oh, I loved his kiss. I loved his embrace. He loved to give presents.
Yes.
And they would be extravagant.
Yeah.
I have a winter coat. I've worn it for 10 years and I'll wear it 10 more years. I have tried to find something like it to replace it. There isn't.
So kiss.
So you like
embrace.
Extravagant gifts.
Well, every once in a while.
Yeah.
Every once in a while.
Because the problems I've always faced with like past relationships, I would try and get an extravagant gift, but then she would always return it. Like she never really liked it. And I was
Like she would want to get it for what she really
or she would
wanted?
like, or she's like, oh, like I kind of like the simple thing. And then I'll get the simple thing. She's like, why'd you give me that? And I was like, I wanted that version. I was like, whatever.
Yeah. But what about the 4th thing? So that was 3. So the giving, because he does, Jack's love language was gift giving. It really was.
Jack
say that's
had
mine,
a roaring sense of humor.
Yes.
He had a wonderful sense of humor, and he would get tickled and just bellow, and it would be so much fun.
Yes, no, he does have a really good sense of humor. And because I love Jack in a different way. I mean, you loved him as his wife. I loved him. He would call me, I want to make sure I get it right. His title for me was this honorary surrogate adopted daughter, something like that. He had this long phrase, and he called me Little One. And in 2012, when my ex-husband, when I asked him for a divorce and he attacked me, Jack lost his mind as if it was his own daughter that was being, attacked. And one of the most loving things any human on the planet has ever done for me is what Jack and Verna did for me. I feel safe saying this now because it's been 12 years, but I nearly lost my life, and we had to go into hiding because we didn't know how long the person who attacked me, my ex-husband, would be in jail. There's a really strange law that if you pay bail, you can just get out, even if you tried to kill someone. It's crazy. So within 10 minutes of the cops showing up, they handed me a black trash bag, and they said, you and the kids run to the house, get what you need. We're going to be with you. You got to get out of here. We don't know when he's going to get bailed out. I didn't have my phone at this point. I didn't have anywhere to go. The fire chief, Greg Harmer, showed up, and I used his phone to call Jack and Verna. And I told them what had happened. And I said, we don't have anywhere to go. And they're both like, get over here. And they, without even hesitating, took me and the three youngest children into hiding, and we lived with them. I lived with Jack and Verna for 2 weeks. Like, they hid my car out in the forest. Like, we hid the car. And then we came back and got my ex's car and hid it in the forest, and it stayed out there all summer.
You took his car and you put it in the woods?
In the forest, yes. We did. We were just covered it and made sure.
Sucks to suck.
Yep. There was no way.
What a douchebag.
Jack had these Tom Sawyer trails that he blazed in there, and he just
put it in a Tom Sawyer
trail. Did it
trail.
rust?
Yes, it rusted. It became useless. There was no way I was going to let him get out of jail and have a means to bother me. And so he lost his car. But,
How much was his bail?
I don't know. His family was wealthy. I have no idea.
That's the only way that he could probably get out of that.
His family is wealthy, and so they had access to money.
Well, that's a huge problem with the criminal justice system. Is they will sympathize a lot with men like that. Well, he's connected.
His sister was the Deputy Attorney General of California. He's an Ivy League educated doctor. Like, they were connected family. And here I am. I don't have anybody in Churchville, New York. They're all in North Carolina. And so Verna and Jack, without hesitation. And I remember, she just would come into the room, and I was on the bed. I had broken bones, I had a broken nose, I had compressed C4. C4 through C7 was compressed. I had a damaged right shoulder, deep vein thrombosis, like all sorts of things in my left leg. I was a mess. I looked bad. And Verna would just come in every day and, give me I think it was a Tylenol that they'd give me, a Tylenol 3 or something, there was some medicine for the pain I was given, very mild, but, and then, dressed my wounds. Like, this woman nursed me back to health. And Jack, guarded the house. Like, he made sure that we were safe, and the children knew that as long as we were with Jack and Verna's house, we were safe. And
what I would have paid to see Jack just tear him apart. Oh, I'm just hearing this.
Jack wanted to. Jack would have. He would have, and that would not have been good for Jack. But he would have, and that's the kind of love that he had for me.
Because I don't know what any of these people look like, by the way. Yeah. I'm just imagining this gigantic lumberjack of a man just bending this weaselly little...
I'll send you a picture of Jack. He's a very handsome man. He's very handsome.
When he was a young man, he came out of a roadhouse, and a couple were making out by his car. And he didn't know, they might get mad at him if he said, I need to get by you guys, excuse me. So he just picked them both up and set them down about 4 feet away.
Can you imagine that? Feeling like you're making out with someone, all of a sudden you're being lifted.
They never said a word.
Wow. That is hilarious. Oh, my God. Oh, my goodness gracious. Well, but for me, that moment is when I felt more safe than I had in for a long time, because he and Verna would listen to me. I would go to their house and tell them how my marriage was falling apart. And they never, like a lot of people stopped being friends with me because they were afraid. Because my ex-husband's big like Jack, too. My ex-husband is 6'2", the big square shoulders. Like, I don't know if you ever watched Celtics basketball, like Robert Parrish shoulders is what I always used to say, just big square guy. He's a big, strong guy. And
I don't know who that is. I'm just
Robert Parrish.
Robert Parrish.
Yeah.
I do that all the time. Like I'm not the biggest sports guy, but like whenever it's like
I think it's Kevin. Kevin Parrish.
Kevin Parrish.
Who's Robert I'm thinking of?
I don't know.
Kevin Parrish and...
Or maybe you're wrong. I don't remember.
It might be Kevin Parrish.
We used to call him Frankenstein.
Yeah. That's the one. I thought maybe it was Kevin Parrish.
I know Frankenstein. I don't know.
He played with Larry Bird.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Kevin Parrish, thank you. That kind of built, and I would go to Jack and Verna's, and they never ostracized me from their lives. They never isolated me, where some people were afraid to come around me at that point because they were afraid that the ex could hurt them. And Jack and Verna never shied away from it.
You're right, it was Robert. I'll shut up.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're thinking
Scott,
of Kevin.
you're not a sports guy either.
He's thinking of Kevin McHale.
You're not
if
a
I'm
sports
right.
guy either, Scott.
Kevin
Yes,
McHale.
you're right.
Kevin McHale,
You're right.
Robert Parrish, and Larry Bird. Those
Right.
were my favorites. I
got
can't
them
believe this
confused.
little
Yes.
Southern girl is out sporting you guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, should I feel less of a man because I don't know my
you
basketball?
Should. Yes, you should.
I don't know
just
about
writing it down.
basketball.
I don't know. I'm not a sports guy.
I'm a foot. I would say of the sports, maybe kind of golf and football.
So this is probably the time I should tell the two of you who don't know me that well. I was voted most athletic of my senior class. So sports was like my thing.
Sports is not my thing.
No,
Sports
I was
hasn't been my
very
thing since I
unathletic.
was 16.
And I was made fun of for being very unathletic because I was this gigantic lumbering monster and I couldn't really do a lot of sports because I was born with one kidney, so I couldn't do a lot of contact sports. But the sports that we played in gym class, I sucked at it.
Really?
I was very unathletic.
Well, was Jack athletic? I mean, he looked athletic to me.
He's got to be if he can lift up two people.
Well, Jack worked on a farm as a teen, and he had this bull calf, and he'd throw it to the ground. And
He
when
picked
the
up
bull
a calf,
yes, he'd wrestle with this bull calf,
Oh,
throw it
really?
down the ground. And then when the calf grew up, it began to menace Jack, and Jack said, I'm going to get you. And the thing turned away and trotted off.
Oh, he's a big guy. What was it like?
picked up a calf.
Well,
That's crazy.
Jack is amazing. That's why I wanted to have Verna in here. I really do wish Jack was still alive. I've had a hard time with it because he was my New York
was so
father.
Frail. He was so frail.
Well, let me ask this. How did he ask you to marry him? How did that happen? Because I'm trying to imagine Jack doing that. I'm having a hard time with that because he wasn't a man of words, really.
He picked up my hand, my left hand, and compared it to the size of his fingers. And he says, And then he turns up with a ring. And I'm wearing it right now.
So he didn't ask. He just slipped the ring on one day.
Well, yes. And
He's like, you're mine. You put it on.
I'm wrestling this calf to the ground.
Get
Here's this
over
ring.
here.
yeah. And
Just the caveman brute. Just
he let me set the date.
Aw.
He let me set the date.
So did he actually say the words, "Verna, will you marry me"?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And did men back then, did they really get down on the knee like you see in
No,
the
he
movies?
did-
I don't think men really do that anymore, do
He
they?
I
did
plan
not
on
do
doing
that.
it if I get married. Well,
You were
I'm
going to do the knee thing.
I think I'm going to do the
I
knee
did.
thing, like when I
You
get the
did?
chance to get married.
I did the knee thing, but there was nothing romantic about it. We were in my old apartment kitchen and we were moving, and I just said, I can't, we got to do this. And I had a ring.
That's one of my goals. Like one of my goals in life is to eventually get a wife and have a family and stuff.
Yeah.
But I would do the knee thing.
The
Absolutely.
knee thing. My ex-husband didn't, and I never really thought about it to this
Well, he's a
moment.
monster. He's a Frankenstein. He's a Frankenstonian.
He's a Robert Parrish? No, Robert Parrish.
Parrish.
That's not fair. It's not fair to Robert
Don't
Parrish.
do not compare
No,
the esteem
no,
of Robert
it's
Parrish,
not at
Frankenstein.
You know what's the problem these days is because you see all of these stories on the internet where a guy skydove into and he proposed to his wife in the
air, in
stadium
midair.
and these guys are doing it in such a way that us normal schmucks who don't have all kinds of money and connections, it's like
Well, most women don't really care.
I don't
about
like
that.
those stadium things. The public proposals, I feel like it's more for show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
It's
not
great
intimate.
entertainment. I love. I'm guilty of it. I watch proposal stuff all the time, and I cry
It
like a
makes
little
me
bit
cringe.
there too.
Doesn't it make you cringe, Verna? I don't like the public stuff.
I
think
see
it's
that.
cute.
I don't see that. I see this absurd stuff about gender reveal about babies.
But you don't see the
Exploding thing.
Yeah.
I love
people
watching
have
the
burnt their
compilation.
house down.
Yeah, the compilation failing of like, it's a girl. Oh my God, that's our house.
Well, I will say this. So my ex-husband, he and I were in L.A. I moved to L.A. from North Carolina. And I remember we were also doing some apartment work, Scott. I don't know if we were moving or what, but he literally said it like this. So you want to get married? That's how he said it. And I was like, really?
You want to get hitched?
Didn't even give me a diamond, and I didn't push it because we were both college students and we're eating ramen noodles. So I'm a very practical person.
Want a ring pop?
Hey, that's funny because when I was my brother's best man, and as the best man, I have the ring when they were getting married, and I gave them a ring pop.
Did you see that movie, Four Weddings and a Funeral? Is that it? Is that what you're trying to emulate there? Oh my God! Well,
that was a big joke.
Well, we were on such a tight budget.
Like
We went to the store that was there was LA riots, and so all these stores were burned out. So I got my wedding dress at I Magnin in Beverly Hills because it had been the floor below it had been burned out, and so I got a designer dress for like $300. Yeah, really fancy dress, and then
Was this during the Rodney King?
yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I was out there. I'd lived out there a month when it happened. Yeah, I got trapped in the traffic that day. I couldn't get from the valley where I worked at UCLA in this lab to my apartment in Brentwood. It was a really weird time to live out there because the Rodney King trial happened. Then there was a big earthquake, a big one, the Northridge quake, and then there was the O.J. Simpson thing, which happened a mile from my apartment.
The white
it was
Bronco.
crazy. Yeah, I went right by my apartment, so it was crazy time to live out there. But we were, college students, and so we go to this mall store to get the rings, and they weren't the right size because I had little skinny fingers. And we go back a couple of weeks later to get it sized, and the thing had gone bankrupt. And so we didn't have our ring sized properly. I had a burned out store-bought, designer dress. It was just, I told him once, I'm not marrying you for the money. and it's true. And then 3 years later, we did split up, and I took him back after about 3 months, and we're at a cheesecake factory, and the LA one has.
So this was an on and off thing.
Yeah, we split once during the marriage.
Oh, wow.
We didn't go through with a divorce, but we go to Cheesecake Factory, and they had a fancier one in LA because it's nice weather, and they had this big waterfall, like inverted waterfall kind of thing in the center, and we had a table outdoors, and he suddenly got really nervous, and we were very comfortable around each other. He was like my best friend. And so I'm like, what is going on with him? And he suddenly comes around. He was sitting like Verna is from me now. And he comes around and crowded restaurant. And I don't like this stuff. Okay. Cringe factor. And he gets down on his knee after our breakup. And he had brought our wedding rings and proposed to me in front of all the people. And everyone clapped. And I'm looking at him like, I tried to be smiling and nice. I was so mad because he knew I didn't like stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That was the first indicator for me that it was about him and not me and what I wanted. And the definition of love is, one of them is wanting to make the other person happy. Well, that wasn't making me happy. He knew if he didn't know I didn't like that, that's one thing. But we had had talks about this. I would say to him when I'd see those baseball games and the guys proposing, I would go, "Oh, I feel so bad because."
You should have said no in front of all those people.
Should have. That would have been epic.
I loved him at that point. I wasn't in love, but I loved him, and so I was making myself uncomfortable for his happiness.
Yeah,
I showed him love by not making a scene and not saying that.
Right.
So that's kind of.
But if you were let's say down the line, you meet somebody, you're gonna get married again. How would you want to be proposed to?
Definitely not in public. I do not want any public stuff about that. I haven't really thought that far, but I don't want it to be a spectacle.
I'm going to bring a confetti cannon. Yeah.
I'm going to bring a gender reveal firework, and I'm going to burn down a canoe.
I have always thought that. Jack and Verna, for example, let's use your relationship. I never thought the two of you were flashy in your romance about town. I mean, you would go to the dinners and they would be there. And Verna does dress up as a clown for the annual Lions Club fair, but you don't know it's her. You can't tell. She now knows that I'm terrified of clowns. Terrified of clowns.
My wife hates clowns.
Is there anyone who isn't?
Well, remember the Seinfeld episode where they're afraid of the clown?
Oh, yeah, George is the clown.
Yes. So Verna comes,
Never heard of Bozo?
There used to be a clown truck that would come with the Lions Club thing, and it sprayed water on me the first time I lived in Churchville. I'd moved here from LA, and my kids said we'd lived here maybe 3 weeks or so. Yeah, 3 weeks. And the Lions Club fair is always in August. And all of a sudden, and we didn't have curtains in our house yet. That's how new we were into our house. And I had these little kids. I had 3 little kids at the time. And all of a sudden, everyone in the neighborhood is on my lawn. And there's putting lawn chairs on my lawn. And I lived on a corner lot. I'm like, is this some weird New York greeting ritual? Like people are camping out on my lawn. And all of a sudden, I hear parade music. I'm like, this is the strangest town. I'm coming from LA, right? We don't have parades in little villages in LA. And all of a sudden, I look down the corner. There's a bull being walked by a man coming up my side street. A bull. That was the first thing in the parade that day. And then behind the bull was Verna, which I didn't know was Verna at the time, in the clown suit. And she doesn't know I'm terrified of it. And she's coming right at me. I'm like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And I've got kids here, and one who's autistic. And so I cannot show an emotional fear response because I'm going to scar my children for life. So I'm going terrified inside, going, "Oh, keep the clown is here." You know? And then the tractor comes by, sprays me with water like right in the face. This clown I don't know who that was, but that was my first introduction to Churchville. It was really strange. But getting back to my point, so besides those sorts of things, I thought that you and Jack had just a comfortable relationship. Like you'd known each other for 22 years. They had a routine. I loved going there after work. I worked in Congress for Congressman Eric Massa. It was a very volatile time to work in Congress. There was, the precursor to the January 6th was going on. There were town hall meetings about universal health care having. I was stressed the heck out. Their house was a safe haven for me. I would go there before I would go home to work, before I had to go home and be mother and put on my different hat and my falling apart marriage. I would go to their house, and just look at their back meadow and big acres and acres of property. And there was just, it was a house of peace. That's what I thought of. And Jack, and Verna, that's what their love was to me. You guys had like a peaceful, and they even bought a boat once, remember?
Yes.
They bought a boat. I always felt like whatever Verna wanted, Jack got her. And that's his love language. He's an big old softy, just a big old guy. But, you and I recently went together and picked out his headstone.
Yes.
And that was a very emotional day, seeing the trajectory of Jack's life. And at his funeral, she didn't tell me about this. I showed up to the service, and she asked me to speak. I didn't know that I was going to be doing that.
They're at the visitation.
The visitation, yes, excuse me, the visitation, because he died in December. And I remember the story I told was that Jack, one, was always there for me, which was a form of love. But the other thing was he wanted me to become like his little girl hunter, and I can't kill an animal. I can't do it. I went out into the woods with him for 6 years. We would get there like 4 o'clock in the morning. I would get there, and Verna would have hot thermoses of coffee for us. He had a little stand that he built, and then he had a tree stand, and then he had a little tent. And I'm like all into it. I'm like, okay, because Eric Massa sent me to a sportsman's conference. And the first year I showed up in a mini skirt and a business suit. I thought that's what you do. I got laughed out of the place. This was at Pierce Church in Chile near Roberts Wesleyan. I got laughed out of the place. And so I became determined. I'm like, okay, next year I'm going to be ready. So I learned archery from Jack. Jack taught me archery, which I love. I love archery. But I couldn't kill an animal. But I went with him for 6 years. And then one day, it was a Sunday morning, this huge doe was coming down one of those, what do you call them, Mark Twain trails?
I called them Tom Sawyer.
The Tom Sawyer trails. The sun's hitting this doe and this beautiful animal. And I'm like, I'm not going to kill it, but I know Jack could eat all winter with that. So I'm like, Jack. And he's up in the tree stand. I'm like, I'm on the little stool. I'm like, Jack. And he fell asleep. He missed his one chance of this. This is a once in a lifetime deer. And Jack missed it. He fell asleep. And I told that story at his visitation because he wasn't mad when he found out about it. He just let it go, no big deal. But he felt like he had carried on a tradition with me. He made me into his little surrogate daughter, and I felt like for a long time after he died, when he was alive, I felt like there was someone watching over me. For me personally,
that's like Scott for me.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's sweet.
No, it is. It's true.
That's
though.
awesome. But I don't have that.
Scott has done a lot more for me than anyone really.
Yeah.
And he's like
That's love.
like a father for me. Yeah.
That's love. I no longer
appreciate
feel
that.
like I have that though. I don't feel like I have Jack watching over me. But but some people would say, Verna, that love doesn't end when you die, and that, metaphysically Jack is still watching over us. Do you feel that his presence is still watching over you?
Yes, I do.
You do?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
And it's the little things like during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like when is it like the most, prominent that you miss Jack?
When I brew the coffee in the morning.
Oh,
Yes.
he did that.
He loved coffee with half and half. No sugar.
And
just
have you
half and half.
found yourself like almost asking him if he wants a cup? Has that happened?
Just about. About.
Oh, well, we're out of time here, but do you have any things that you want to say about Jack before we go? Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. It was really important for me to have someone who I know the full arc of their love story. And from afar, I can say, Verna, that it was a very sweet love story.
I had this inscribed on Jack's tombstone. Hold fast to what is good.
Oh,
It's from the epistles.
I love that. It really perfectly captures what love should be. Hold fast to what is good. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Verna. Thank you for listening to Sparks of Love, and have a great week.